Well, hi everybody, and welcome back to this episode of The Road to Somewhere. Actually, today is the finale of Season 1. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just a couple of quick announcements before we jump into the actual episode here today. First, since I won't see you after today for a little bit, I did want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and for those of you that are actually watching the video as we go along, this is Thanksgiving week, and also I guess I should wish you a Merry Christmas, although I'll be sending out a few emails between now and then just to keep you updated. But I was thinking, if you have stuck with this in these 6 episodes of Season 1, and if in fact you have watched the videos that go along with it, you would probably have a greater understanding of the Torah, the law of the Old Testament, than about 99% of the general population that either is biblically illiterate, or even those that are church members and listen to messages every week. A lot of times they don't get the actual big picture of what's going on in each of these books. So again, I just want to continue to encourage you not only to watch our little story time of going through the road to somewhere, but to make sure that you watch those videos too, because they're very important. I think that I also wanted to say thank you again to those of you that have helped with our financial situation at Telos Project. Again, we're probably right now about $20,000 behind from where we were in last year's budget. And again, just to remind you, there is now an easy way to donate on the Telos Project website, and that's the address above there on how to get to it. But we now have a donate button too. This is the time of year when many of you, excuse me, I had yelled a lot during the Bronco game last night, so if my voice cracks a bit today, you'll understand why. If you watch the game, you'll understand why. Anyway, this is the time of year where you're probably begin to get besieged and bombarded by requests from virtually every nonprofit in the United States about year-end giving. That's because approximately 80% of most nonprofits' budgets actually come in during this last month of the year, and a huge percentage of that, I just read this week, actually comes in the last 3 days of the year. So again, if you're thinking about your year-end giving, I hope you would consider Telos, and along with that donate, there is a place if you'd like to begin to give on a regular basis. You can set that up at that site also. Again, today we are in episode 6 of Season 1 that we've been calling the Torah, and I'm calling this episode "Say It Again, Sam." I started out just with "Say It Again," and then I remembered the scene in Casablanca where Humphrey Bogart says, "Play it again, Sam." So this is just a little takeoff on that, and few people know that Moses' nickname was Sam, so just remember that as we go along here today. Not true, by the way. All right, and just previously, kind of to remember what's been going on here, we're in the state of Illinois, which is our first leg of the journey, and really our entire first season of The Road to Somewhere takes place here in Illinois. And again, we have been to a number of cities and stopped and shot videos to go along with the lecture series on the Bible. And we've had 5 stops so far in in Illinois. We have one extra stop there simply because of the fact that we did an introductory session, but we've left Chicago. We've gone through Joliet, where we met the Blues Brothers again at the Rich and Creamy ice cream stand. We've gone through Dwight, that had that great old Restore service station. We've stopped in Funk's Grove, and there, because of its place as a well known for its maple syrup, spelled with an I instead of a Y, shot our video there in Funk's Grove, and then on to Springfield, and where we saw Abraham Lincoln's shiny nose. And again, remember, if you ever go there, make sure and rub Lincoln's nose. And then last week we were in Litchfield, which is a smaller town than Springfield was, and today we go to even a smaller town, and that is that we're going to finish up season 1 and this our time in Illinois at a little town called Mitchell, and there's a reason for that. Now, by the way, on the way from Litchfield to Mitchell, you go through a number of small towns on Route 66. Some of them have some interesting Route 66 icons. So we're driving along in our great Corvette, and one of the places that we drive through is that we go through the town of Mount Olive, and there's this restored Shell station. We're going to go through Stanton, where the famous Henry's Rabbit Ranch is found. Rabbit Ranch and Emporium. It's just a kind of wild place. It has all kinds of old time pieces from Route 66. I personally really would like to have this truck along with the Corvette, so we'll just kind of have to see if anything like that ever happens. But another thing about Henry's Rabbit Ranch, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the greatest stops on Route 66 is called Cadillac Ranch. It's by Amarillo, Texas. And years ago, a San Francisco art group did basically an art installation where they took 10 Cadillacs and planted them in a field in a row at a 45-degree angle. And over the years, people stop and actually go out and paint graffiti on those Cadillacs, and that's actually considered to be kosher. So when we get there, you'll see what I mean. But at Henry's Rabbit Ranch, he decided that he should replicate Cadillac Ranch, and so he got a bunch of old VW rabbits and planted them in the ground here, and so he has his own kind of Cadillac Ranch installation, but made up of old Volkswagen rabbits. So interesting sights all the way along Route 66, and so many of them that we don't even have a chance to stop and talk about. But hopefully someday you'll get a chance to drive it and see all of this. I did want to do a little bit of a preview too before we jumped into today's story. I wanted to let you know that next season, season 2, which will begin after the first of the year, we're going to head into Missouri. As a matter of fact, Mitchell is only 13 miles from St. Louis. I haven't been there in quite a while, and I don't know, it's probably almost like a suburb of St. Louis. It's right on the Mississippi River, and when you cross the Mississippi, you find yourself in Missouri, and you're right in St. Louis. So that's really what we have coming up. There are 12 episodes in season 2. It's the history of Israel, so it's very fascinating material. I'll break that up into 2 6-week sessions, again, just because I'm finding that people do get behind, and it helps to have a little bit of a break to get caught up. And St. Louis is going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to telling you some of the stories there. I was, when my sister and I were born, we were the 5th generation of people from our family that lived in St. Louis. going all the way back to the 1860s when my great-great-grandfather immigrated from Germany. And after he, came to live in the States, he came to St. Louis. And so there was my great-great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, I think it was my great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, my grandfather, my parents, and my sister and I. So 5 generations, and of course I was born there. So, and there's some fun things that take place. One of the things is that, I'll go back here for a second, see if I can find this. But anyway, the car that we're driving as we're on Route 66 was actually built in St. Louis, the original, not the modified version. And that car was built just actually about a block away from where my grandfather and great-grandfather had a saloon first and then a restaurant. So again, there's a lot of personal history for me in St. Louis, and that will be our first stop in season number 2, so I'm looking forward to that. But today, again, we are going to move into Mitchell, and Mitchell really is a small town. There's only 1,200 people there, and there's one iconic Route 66 stop, and that is the Luna Cafe. And part of what the Luna Cafe is famous for is that this was apparently one of Al Capone's favorite hangout spots. Now, I don't understand, I've always thought of Capone being in Chicago, and this is quite a drive from Chicago, but it was a famous spot. It's still there. It's a restaurant today. Back in the day of Al Capone, though, in the basement there was an illegal gambling setup, and in the upper level of the building there was a brothel. So the middle level was a restaurant and a bar, and the rest of it was a brothel and a gambling casino. So it was quite a wild place back in the 30s, particularly. So in the book, when we arrive here, Joy sets up the scene with the Luna Cafe in the background, and John, they tape John's narrative. I thought I might just read a little bit of that to you today. I didn't do that last week, but this is what John's little narrative is that gets filmed for the series. John says this as they're filming, okay? Well, here we are at our final stop in Illinois, and behind me is the famous Luna Cafe. If you look carefully, you might see the ghost of Al Capone checking out what we're doing at one of his regular stops. Along with this being our final stop in Illinois, it's also our final look at the books of the Old Testament called the Torah, or the Pentateuch. The name of the 5th book of the Bible is Deuteronomy. The name in the Hebrew Bible is simply words or spoken words. In our Bible, the word Deuteronomy, which came when it was translated into Greek out of Hebrew, literally means second law. It comes from 2 Greek words, deuteros, which means second, and nomos, which means law. And it gives us a big clue about the content of the book. Just as the generation that Moses led out of Egypt was given the law at Sinai, a new generation needs to be reminded of the rules God gave before they crossed the Jordan River and began to possess the land they believed God had given them. As his final task as leader, Moses delivers a series of messages that remind this new generation of the history of what happened since they left Egypt and what was expected of them in the promised land. He also gives a series of warnings about what disasters would happen if they forget what God required. And then we're simply told that when Moses finishes, he walks off into the wilderness and climbs Mount Nebo, where he could see the land he would never enter. So we shoot our video there, and our video then is tied in to the book of Deuteronomy. There's not a lot more to say about Mitchell because pretty much Luna Cafe is all there is that is there. But again, in Deuteronomy, just a couple of thoughts. I want to encourage you to make sure that you watch the video. I watched it this week. It's just filled with great information. Will give you a handle on what this book is all about. But again, it's a second law. Now think about this for a second. It's been 38 years since the spies went into the promised land in the book of Numbers and came back with 10 of them giving the bad report and the people listening to them. And then in response to that, God, telling the people that any man that was 20 years of age or older, any person that was 20 years of age or older at the time that happened, was not going to enter the promised land. And part of the reason that they wander in the wilderness for 40 years is that 600,000 fighting men that were 20 years of age and older have died. When you factor in wives into that, probably not any kids. They would have had to have been older than their parents. But really, there's basically 1 million graves in the wilderness. It's just mind-boggling to think about that. Again, probably at least 1 million people that were 20 years of age and older are not going to enter the promised land. At first blush, this might seem a little harsh on God's behalf, but when you think about it, God's objective was to build this great nation. And one of the things that I think we see, particularly in the book of Numbers, is that it's not real easy, but let's just say it's easy to get the people out of Egypt, but it's very hard to get Egypt out of the people. And so you have a generation at the beginning of the Exodus period as they leave Egypt and begin to head to Sinai, and then from Sinai head on to the east banks of the Jordan River. But you have a generation that has been sort of educated and indoctrinated in Egyptian ways. They're constantly saying to Moses in the book of Numbers, "Why have you brought us out here to die in the desert? We want to go back to Egypt." They were slaves in Egypt. They were being subjected to harsh labor. And now out in the wilderness, they're saying, "We want to go back." So again, I think that partially what's happening here, and at least part of what God's rationale must have been, was that the generation that came out of Egypt would not be prepared or equipped or able to be the kind of a nation that God was envisioning for Israel. So you have that census then at the end of Numbers, and what you see is that you have almost the exact number of fighting men that were under the age of 20 when the first census was taken. Again, almost the same number, 600,000 roughly men. And then when you think about their wives and their kids, you probably again have roughly 3 million people that are now positioned on the east bank of the Jordan River, ready to enter in. It's a new generation, and to this new generation, they would perhaps, most of them would have no memory. Many of them weren't even born yet of what happened at Sinai and the law that was given there at Sinai. And so Moses needs to impart to them now the law, and it's for the second time, and thus we have this title of Deuteronomy, or second law. What he does is he helps them remember what happened at Sinai. He gives a little bit of a history of the journey, and then he finishes his 3 speeches, and when he does, what we're told is that he heads off into the wilderness to Mount Nebo, and there he's going to die. So, and God will bury him. I was on Mount Nebo several years ago, and this is kind of looking out over what the view would have been from Mount Nebo, and you can see this massive plain that just would have been filled with people at the time that Moses gives the book of Deuteronomy. And the little chart here shows you the cities that you can actually almost see from Mount Nebo in the directions there. And so when Moses heads off, this is what the wilderness around Mount Nebo looked like. So again, he gives his message. He gives some warnings about keeping God's law. Leadership is transferred over to Joshua. An important video to make sure that you watch this video. And again, if you could sort of imagine the drama of this scene, he imparts this information, and then he heads into the wilderness to die, and season 1 comes to an end. And so next time that we're back together, we're going to be heading out of Illinois. We're going to be crossing one of the major bridges to the north of St. Louis, staying on Bypass 66. We'll cross the Mississippi River. We'll be in St. Louis, and it's going to be a fun stop for us and a great way to start season 2. So get caught up. I know how many computers have been tuned in, and I know that some of you are a little bit behind. Along with getting caught up, you'll have plenty of time to go back and actually watch the videos of Genesis through Deuteronomy. They are just loaded with information, and again, you'll have a grasp on the Torah, which was the most important part of the Old Testament to the Jewish people. So thanks for joining in, being a part of our adventure, and again, happy Thanksgiving, and I will look forward to being back with you. I'm going to send out one link, here's a little spoiler, in between Christmas and Thanksgiving. I did one video that it kind of explains how the Bible all fits together, and I'm going to send that link out sometime early December so you have something to watch while you're waiting for season number 2. So again, thanks for being with us, and I'll see you in the new year.